And while I'm not waving a Scott Cunningham book in front of you, I just didn't pull out of the bookcase, I enjoy Scott Cunningham's book for the power of what those books have brought to... They're oftentimes the first introduction that any of you have to this path, and they are simple and pure and to the point. I find them limiting. You're not going to find me recommending any of those to someone who comes to me asking for recommendations on books. It doesn't mean I don't like them, but sometimes things are simplified to the point that they... I think Scott assumed that you already had a relationship, and I think he may have assumed that you may already have been practicing in community and were looking for guidance on practicing as a solo practitioner. That was the power of those books when they came out. I still remember how shocked we all were that anybody would write a book about the power of being a solo practitioner, because we came from the traditional practice of Wicca, which was in community. We didn't practice it specifically in the way of rites. We were connected to earth, and our spirituality was earth-based, and our gods were with us. But as far as ritual and the kinds of things that we did in community, we hadn't learned necessarily to apply them to solo practice. That's the power of what he brought to us. But I actually think that what he did in those books has been done much better as time went by, when the point wasn't so much you can do this as a solo practitioner. When it became accepted that one could be a solitary Wiccan, fantastic books were written about how to do that, what rite might be for an individual, how energy raising might be for an individual, or invocation, or all the things that would be needing to be done differently, but still connecting to the very same thing that we had connected to in community. So while I don't recommend Scott Cunningham, if you have come to us and that by reading his books, which are kind and loving and open up a possibility for you to explore solitary practice, there is the power in them. I just think that there's been a lot written that we benefit far more greatly from than the books that he wrote. However, I do love his earth power, and I do love his herbal books, so I believe there is power in some of the other things that we do have from what Scott left us, but not necessarily his couple of books on the solo practitioner. Stuart Farrer, who is my absolute favorite pagan author. A library to me is complete if you have Vivienne Crowley's Wicca, which gives us the modern understanding at the level of the psyche and community, psychology even, of what the practice of witchcraft can be. And then you add these books by Stuart Farrer, and you get to what I consider to be a complete library with only that number of books when it comes to specifically witchy books. We start with The Witch's Way. And what I'm going to suggest, because I could go on too long about each one of these things that Stuart wrote, is, if you're not familiar with them, and I would be surprised if you aren't, if you are exploring traditional Wicca, I'd be surprised if you weren't, but The Witch's Way is subtitled Principles, Rituals, and Beliefs of Modern Witchcraft. That's exactly what it is. Principles, rituals, and beliefs. Spend some time reading synopsis of that and think about if that might not be a good addition to your pagan library. And his What Witches Do. The 8 Sabbats for Witches. The Witch's Goddess, and the Witch's God. I'm not saying that those are the only good books when it comes to traditional witchcraft, but I am saying that, to my experience, they describe as close as anything, even outside of Buckland, that I would think would have described what I do very much to the T, but in fact did not. That Stuart Farrer got it. He got it all. He got the beauty and the emotion and the spirituality and the power of what we do and what we believe in and how we celebrated our rites and our holidays. Everything in those books is worth every moment of the time it takes you to read them. Isaac Bonewits. I have loaned out my copy of Real Magic, and it will come back to me shortly, I'm sure. 1971 that came out. Amazing and powerful book for me in the way it taught us what magic was, how you did it, what it could accomplish, the responsibilities of it, and the laws around it. Real Magic. I wish I could hold that up for you, but I don't have it. I've loaned it out, and I hope it brings the knowledge to the person I loaned it to that it gave to me. Amazing, powerful book for me. I also really like something he wrote relatively recently. I'm looking for the date on this for you. Okay, first printing in 2007. It's a complete guide to designing public rituals. It is called Neo-Pagan Rites. And actually, it's good if you indeed are trying to create public rituals, but I think it also is a really good primer on creating ritual. And many of you are solitaries, and you are creating ritual because you have to write it for yourself, design it for yourself. You may find things in books that you need to piece together into something that is yours. Find something that was written for a group that you want to make for a solitary. Or you may be finding some really good inspirational things in books written for solitaries that you want to take to the coven level or a public rite level. I really think that Neo-Pagan Rites is a really good book for creating ritual. There's lots of books out there on creating ritual, don't get me wrong, but I just think he got it right when he wrote about it. Kept it simple and understandable, and I think you can take a lot from that book. So for Isaac, I recommend Real Magic, and I recommend Neo-Pagan Rites. So that's going to bring us to something even more recent, and one of my favorite, truly recent writers is Deborah Lipp. And I think we first met Deborah when she wrote with Isaac The Study of Witchcraft. Excellent, excellent book. Really highly recommended. And once again, it's a book that I tried to find it, couldn't find it anywhere. It means I've lent it out. But Isaac Bonewits and Deborah Lipp's The Study of Witchcraft, really worth a read. Deborah Lipp. I'm going to recommend two new writers. Deborah Lipp is one, and Christopher Penczak is one. Neither one of those recommendations is surprising, coming from me. Deborah has a similar history to what I do, and Christopher has a tie-in to Laurie Cabot and the East Coast witches that I came to know in the 70s and the 80s along the East Coast here. And what he writes, I'll get to him in a second. Let me get back to Deborah Lipp. Let's skip over her. Deborah Lipp. I highly recommend Deborah Lipp. First, the book that she wrote with Isaac Bonewits, The Study of Witchcraft. And then a book which I have, once again, I've loaned it out. It's Deborah's The Way of the Four, her book on the elements and elemental magic. Why I recommend it? It is the simplest, purest, smartest, most insightful discussion of what it means to be an elemental witch of any book I've read. Brings it down to a simple level of understanding what you do to create a relationship with each of the four elements, the way of the four. And then I also recommend her book, which is kind of a follow-up to that. It's called The Elements of Ritual, where she uses what you will have learned from her book, The Way of the Four, regarding the elements, or what you already know of your relationship to the elements, to weave that into what is ritual. The reason I recommend this book for you is, again, because her style is direct and simple and concise and emotional. She gets you to a place of simple understanding of what something is. She doesn't tell you this is exactly what you have to do, but she gives a lot of guidance. A lot of guidance. she actually teaches, I think, in a similar way to what I aspire to, which is, I do teach a way. I teach this is what your ritual is, this is what your rite will be, this is what you will do, this is what you will say. And then I expect you to take it from there and do whatever it is that you need to do with it to make it what it needs to be for you. The Elements of Ritual is subtitled Air, Fire, Water, and Earth in the Wiccan Circle. I know a lot of you struggle with things like circle casting and why do we go through that. And if you are interested in that kind of ceremonial witchcraft is what I think of it as. I don't like it when they call those of us who do what I do ceremonial magicians. Oh yes, definitely what I would do was inspired by ceremonial magicians through time and recently. However, I like to call myself a ceremonial witch. I love celebrating through rite. And Deborah's book, The Elements of Ritual, is an excellent book for those of you who want to explore formal ritual, but at a level which is comfortable and familiar and easy, and something which will be a flow, a way of expressing yourself through rite. Very, very good book. Her Way of the Four and her Elements of Ritual I highly recommend. And there is one current writer that I truly recommend every single thing that he writes, and I can say without a doubt that as he continues to publish, continue to buy what he publishes, because I have no doubt that he will never cheat us. He will never treat us like idiots. He will also never speak over our heads, and that is Christopher Penczak. I cannot speak highly enough of Christopher Penczak. Amazing writer, amazing way of making things a spiritual journey, an energetic journey, and a journey of growth, of human growth and transformation. I just think he is amazing. The first two books that I had gotten of his were The Inner Temple of Witchcraft, which focuses magic, meditation, and psychic development. I think perhaps that was the second book I got. The first book I got was The Outer Temple of Witchcraft. Circles, Spells, and Rituals. Christopher never leaves you hanging without explaining why. He doesn't spout forth and leave you there. He always suggests you question and challenge and try it for yourself and experiment. He doesn't make it easy for you. He expects you to work at it. He gives you things to work at. He gives you exercises. He gives you things you can read. I just think he is the most, he's very prolific, and every now and then one of our more new agey Wiccan writers is very prolific. There are certain writers that you know that there is never going to be a topic that's even vaguely pagan that they aren't going to be the experts on the subject. And I don't want to mention names because, as I said, value in all books that we read. But there are some people that, if there's a flavor of the month that has anything even vaguely to do with paganism, they become an expert. All of a sudden they've studied with somebody who's an expert, they've initiated in that tradition, they've done that kind of magic, they become cultural experts on cultures that are not theirs, but because they're popular at the moment, they're suddenly all expert. So you can be suspicious of some of these neo-pagan writers in that they're always latching on to the next big thing, and you can see where they've cobbled together their information from the same sources you can read, put their name on a book, and they're selling it. Not Christopher Penczak. Amazingly bright man, gifted in the way he communicates. I cannot recommend his books any more than by saying of the ones who are currently writing and publishing. I have not been able to buy everything because I have to in time save up and buy the books, but I am telling you now, I will own everything that Christopher Penczak writes. It will be a living part of the tools of the books that are in my bookshelf. I hope there has been something of interest in that long litany of books that move me. I encourage you to do two things if you are turning to me for advice when it comes to books. Is the books that may move you the most powerfully are not going to, in any official sense, be books on paganism, on witchcraft, or on Wicca. But if you are interested in learning about something more traditional, the magic workings, the rites, the holidays, the activities at the spiritual, energetic, and psyche levels of who you are in relationship to the deep inner self that you are, and in relationship to all that is, the books that I have recommended to you that are Wicca-centered are books that I find are helpful on that path. If you're reading any of these books and you have questions and you'd like to discuss them, don't hesitate to reach out to me. One of the things that we can lack as solitaries is when these various books, say Fitch's books and Slater's books and Lady Sheba's books were coming out in the 70s, when I was in a coven in the 70s, my first formal coven, we got to sit around and talk them out and argue them and debate them and have wonderful conversations about them. The books lived in a way that was more than just what was written. And you can guess, when you look at the size of something like Ed Fitch's books, who believed so totally in disseminating information for all of us and teaching and making what we do open and visible. And there's a little book no bigger than this. The thought was there would be discussions out of that people would share and grow and learn together. And sometimes you don't have that when you're a solitary reading and trying to learn and take on some new practice in a path that you're following. So if you're reading any of these books that I've mentioned and you want to ask a question or bounce something off of me, include me in that. Reach out to me. I'd be delighted to get a video or an email from you. Make these books live. Make these books live. If you are, my last piece of advice, you eagerly await the arrival of a new book that you've ordered, and it comes in and you begin reading it and you're all excited and it's just letting you down. Do two things. Remember, you can learn by defining what you disagree with. The other thing you can do, turn to that index. Take your finger down the index, and for every topic that interests you, go back and read just those pages. You're going to find gemstones buried in the middle of all that paper. I can guarantee you every book is a good book. So today I wish you happy reading, as well as I wish you, as always, mirth and reverence. Merry part.